Hey, Jocko, what can we do with a coworker who isn't on board? When someone brings up something to him, he gets defensive and turns it into being everyone else's problem.
Mm-hmm. This was a Twitter question, by the way.
Sure.
And I answered it. And I answered it really simply, really straightforward. Take ownership of the problem and solve it. Take ownership of the problem and fix it.
Yeah.
Right? Because think about what's happening here, right? What the person is saying, like, oh, this is me saying, oh, Echo won't take ownership of the problem. And every time I tell him he does something wrong, he just gets defensive.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm not communicating with you well enough. If all I'm doing is blaming you and you're getting defensive. And by the way, if I'm the type of person that takes ownership of things, why am I blaming you in the first place? I should be looking at myself. And by the way, if you point your fingers at me and you say, hey, this is my fault, you know what I say? Yeah, I agree. It is my fault. And here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Now, I'm not going to rub it in your face. I'm not going to do it so I prove a point. That's not what I'm doing. I'm actually doing it because I want to win. I'm actually doing it because I want to accomplish the mission. That's why I'm going to fix the problem. Now, if we have a weak member of the team that doesn't take ownership, then guess what? It's my responsibility to take ownership of the problem and fix it. And eventually, but the good thing about this is if you make an excuse about something and I fix that excuse, and then you make an excuse about something else, I fix that one, and then you make an excuse about something else and I fix that one, eventually there's no more excuses for you. And now you're left with what you can actually handle as Echo with no more excuses to make. And then either you're capable or you're not. And by the way, guess what? As the leader, then it becomes my job to get rid of you if you cannot do the thing that I asked you to do or that you're supposed to do for the team. So yeah, because I mean, eventually if I keep stepping up and taking things away from you, there's not going to be any more excuses, and you'll either end up with no responsibility and therefore no value, and then you have no job. That's the way it works. Now, let me ask you this. When is there a time that a subordinate does something and it's not the leader's fault? So think about this. And when something goes wrong with a team member, when is it not the leader's fault? So if you got a machine gunner and the machine gunner shoots outside of his field of fire, clearly he didn't pay attention during the brief. That's the problem. If I have a machine gunner that engages non-hostile targets, it's the machine gunner's fault because he didn't do improper, he did improper positive identification of his targets and engaged friendlies or at least non-hostiles. So that's the machine gunner's fault. Or the machine gunner's weapon goes down because the machine gunner didn't clean. It's his fault because he didn't clean his weapon, maintain his weapon properly. The machine gunner's fault. So all those things. The machine gunner shoots out of his field of fire. The machine gunner engages non-hostile targets. The machine gunner's weapon goes down. All those are the machine gunner's fault. Clearly. Or maybe not so clearly, because here's how I would look at those things. Because by the way, if you're my machine gunner and I point my finger at you and start yelling at you and telling you that you did something wrong, obviously we know what happened. You start making excuses and blaming other people, and you don't accepting responsibility because you get defensive, and that's what people do. So for me, and what a good leader does is a good leader, when the machine gunner shoots out of his field of fire, the leader says, oh, you know what? I didn't explain the fields of fire clearly enough for you. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. Machine gunner engages a non-hostile target. Then the leader says, hey, I should have given you better training on target identification. We will go back and fix that. Or the machine gunner's weapon goes down. It means that, hey, as the leader, you know what? I should have done a better job inspecting weapons. I should have explained how important the maintenance was. That's my fault. I won't let it happen again. So even in these instances where it's real easy to blame the individual, a good leader, instead of blaming the individual, will take ownership of the problem. That's what you do, and that's what's going on in this case. You got a coworker that's not on board and just gets defensive and turns it into everyone else's problem. That's right. Grab ownership of those problems. And by the way, the subordinate that's not taking ownership, that's your fault as a leader. And the way that you get someone to take ownership isn't by saying, hey, don't get defensive. You need to take ownership of this problem. It's your problem. That doesn't make people take ownership. Here's the tricky part. Here's the black belt situation. The black belt situation is if I want you to take ownership, instead of blaming you, I'm gonna take ownership of the problem. I'm gonna relieve you of that. And now you're gonna go, wait, no, I should be able to fix that. I'm sorry, boss. I'm sorry, Jocko. I shouldn't have shot outside the field of fire. I need to pay better attention during the brief. If I don't know what it was, I'm gonna ask questions next time. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Please, let me get it fixed. And that is how you get someone to take ownership. You don't get people to take ownership by telling them to take ownership of things. And there's a little dichotomy here too. Because if it's a plan, then the way I get you to take ownership of it is by saying, hey, Echo, come up with a plan. Like we talked about the standard operating procedures earlier. If I come up with the standard operating procedures myself and then I force them onto you, you don't take ownership of those. Those are mine. So I have to give you ownership. But when it's a negative, so when it's a positive thing, I give it to you. When it's a negative thing, I take it. I take it. Positive thing, give it. Because people want that positive thing. When it's a negative thing, they don't want it. You take it from them. And by the way, when it's a positive thing and you give it to them, guess what they want to do with it? They want to share it. They want to do it. When it's a negative thing and you force it on them, they want to get rid of it. So, there you go. I'm glad that this person's in the game, and now they know how to handle this coworker and make it into a good situation.